Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about Wuthering Waves. Now, I've played it for close to 100 hours in CBT2, and I want to give you my thoughts from things ranging from the story, the world, combat, character diversity, the ecosystem, and the summons as well. So I'll leave timestamps in the description if you want to jump around to my thoughts on specific points. But before we get into it, I do have to thank Wuthering Waves for sponsoring this video. However, I do really enjoy the game, and I have been covering it on my other YouTube channel. So if you want to get more Wuthering Waves, it is over there as well. And make sure you go ahead and pre-register for the game using the link in the description below. Let's get into it with the first topic being the story, because I know a lot of people are going to ask about this because they did do the dev interview where they revamped the entire story essentially based on feedback from CBT1. I just want to let you guys know, I personally skipped the story. In this beta, it was not yet voiced in English. However, it will be at launch. I will definitely be playing through the story once it is globally launched. But until then, I'm not going to dive in too much. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I did skip it. I have heard others loved it. The cutscenes, whenever there's a fully animated cutscene, I was obviously watching it because I just enjoy that stuff, and that stuff was really well presented. But I am thoroughly looking forward to the story from what I've heard from other people once it does globally launch with some English voice acting. Next, I want to talk about the world, exploration, traversing, and stuff like that. Now, I think the world is definitely a nice size for a launching of the game. It feels like there's enough different areas to explore. We've got some more desolate areas, you've got some vibrant areas, there's a good mix of places. Now, as for traversing, I think traversal is really enjoyable. The common thing you have is, well, you have a sprint button. So when you dash, you can enable sprint, and sprinting doesn't consume your stamina. So you can actually just sprint all the time and regenerate your stamina. And it's only when you do the dash from tapping it that it actually consumes that stamina, which I think is a really great system for getting around. The other thing that we do have is the grappling hook. Now, the grappling hook is incredibly fun. There is some areas in the game where there's little sort of grappling hook points where you can hit them from a long way away, and it can help you get around different towns and areas a lot faster like that. So I do appreciate those. But in general, with your jumping into a dash in the air where you can get a little flip, and then you can do your grappling hook to get a bit more range, it honestly just feels fun getting around the place. Now, the other big thing that we have is going to be the wall running. Now, the wall running makes it so good to run up walls, and as you play the game more, your stamina will increase and basically allow you to run up most things that you encounter. And most of them, if you can't run up, there will be a little ledge somewhere that you can get up, which is fantastic. On top of that, we have the little wall flip, or I don't know what to describe it, but if you're running up a wall and there's a little ledge there, in other games you may get stuck and have to drop down and go around and find another way around it. But now you can just put your hand there and flip yourself over it. Now, that may sound like a little thing, but when you're climbing a wall because you just want to get somewhere and there's that little ledge that stops you doing it, it sucks. And being able to flip over it, I think, is an absolutely fantastic feature. So I think traversal in this game has been fantastic. There are a lot of teleport points around the world, and you can normally get to wherever you need to go pretty quick once you go to a fast travel teleport point. And the fantastic thing, and we're going to talk about echoes here as well, the fantastic thing is killing enemies in the world feels exciting. I enjoy finding any enemy to fight, essentially because with your gearing system in this game, they are called the echoes, which are kind of like shadows that get left behind when you kill an enemy in the world, and then you can catch them, and they are essentially the gear that you equip to your character to increase their stats and stuff like that. So I found myself, every time I saw an enemy, I got excited to defeat them because it gave me a chance to get a new gear drop. And I really enjoyed that system, and I think that system in itself adds a lot of value to just the world and exploring, because it's not just mundane, I have to kill something, it's I get to kill something and I have a chance to get a better piece of gear out of killing them. Now, with these echoes, or gearing type system, if you will, they are basically endlessly farmable, because yes, all the units in your world will respawn every day, so you can only clear them once, but you can jump into another person's world and play co-op and farm it in their world as well. So you do have those extensive ways of farming these echoes. So getting the right main stat on an echo, which is often a hard thing to do in other games, getting that main stat you want, actually is easy if you're willing to put into the time to grind it out. And that is a really good system itself. However, we do have a bottleneck, and the two bottlenecks that we do have are going to be experience to level up those echoes, and then also another item that we need to unlock substats. So when you upgrade your echo, let's say it's a gold echo and it can upgrade to level 25, you'll unlock the capacity for 5 substats. However, you have to use a currency to unlock those substats, and that currency is what you're going to need to burn your stamina for. So it's a very fresh take on a gearing system. It may seem a bit overwhelming to people trying to grind super hard to get as many echoes as they can. It can be a bit overwhelming. However, they do have tacit fields which can be used to basically use stamina to obtain echoes. Now, I do think there is a bit of balancing that needs to happen inside these teams to optimize it, but I'm very optimistic about the process of the echoes, because as I mentioned, the echo system in itself makes the world incredibly exciting, and then on top of that, you get to use whichever echo is the top one in your list of quote-unquote gear in combat, which now that makes the perfect segue into combat itself. So combat in this game feels very fast-paced and dynamic, and really feels rewarding when you can time things well. Now, what we have is we have our standard attacks for character, which is your left click. You can spam it, you can do a hold click to do a charge attack. We then have a skill which normally has a cooldown for characters. Some characters are unique, but in general, it's your E ability that has a cooldown. Then we have your R ability, which is your ultimate, which you generate over time, and then you can use your ultimate ability. Now, on top of that, each character, and this is where we talk about character diversity, each character has a unique sort of resource bar that interacts in different ways with their kit. They can generate their resources differently, and they expend it in different ways. And I think the way they use these resource bars to make every character feel incredibly unique is fantastic. We have someone like Danjin, who is a 4-star character who can basically endlessly spam her E ability, but when she combos it, she can generate this energy gauge faster, and when it's above 50%, she can use her charge attack to go ahead and deal extra damage, but also heal herself up. So we have different things like that. We have other characters that have a window, and you get a sliding bar, and you've got to click again and release in that right window to get a lunge attack that's going to shatter ice. So you have a lot of cool effects in characters, and the way they've organized their character system for combat means that you will get a lot of diversity in playstyles of characters, and I think that is one of my favorite things inside the game is the way that that system works. Now, in addition to that, we also have a separate energy which is called your Concerto energy, which controls using intro and outro skills. So each character has their own Concerto energy bar, and they will generate it over time, and once it reaches full, it means when you swap characters, you will be able to use the current character's outro skill and the upcoming character's intro skill. Often these are more like extra damage when they come in, or some sort of buffing or debuffing capabilities, but they add that extra thing that you can time to get extra optimization out of your combat. And then finally in combat, we have our defensive options. You have a dodge button, which you can use to obviously dodge, but then you also have parrying opportunities when an enemy boss, normally the bosses, will give you a telegraph that they're about to enter a parry window with a sort of gold ring that will come up, and if you can time that gold ring to when they attack you with one of your basic attacks or abilities, then you can actually parry them, which is going to add more to their break bar and get you closer to breaking them, but also flinch them so that you can go into some damage rotations. Now, when we talk about what types of combat there is in itself, I think they have done a very good job of balancing for the hardcore and the casual player. Because if we look at the casual player going around the world, defeating enemies, getting echoes, it's fairly simple. You don't have to really time everything too well. You can go through, you can just sort of face roll through your rotation and defeat things pretty easily without too much stress. And it feels good because you don't have to try overly hard, because at the end of the day, you're trying to get your echoes up and do some standard stuff. And if that's just clearing the normal story, it's perfectly fine. Even doing the bosses in the world that are going to be what you farm for resources and also to get the boss echoes, they're not too complicated. They do give you a taste of the complexity of the hardcore side of the game, but without without penalizing you too much for making mistakes. However, then we get into the hologram bosses, and these are completely next level. These are incredibly hard, and you have to really time your parry windows, your dodge windows, maximize your damage dealing rotations to actually deal enough damage to complete them in time, but also be parrying enough to break them to help with your damage and also survive, because these things are very, very complex fights that are incredibly difficult. With, at the moment, they have 6 different stages, and each stage you go up, the fight gets more complex. Whether the parry window shortens or whether they have an entirely new mechanic, there's all these different things that you've got to consider. And like I said, I think they've done a very, very good job of balancing the casual side of the game for a player who really just wants to enjoy the world and the game's scenery and what the game has to offer for a casual player. But then they've also done really well on the hardcore player, giving them that amazing challenge without rewarding them too disproportionately that the casual players feel left out. So I think they've done a great balance on that, and I have thoroughly enjoyed combat in the game. And finally, I wanted to touch on summons. Now, in summons, we have a beginner banner. Fantastic, these banners. You know, you get an early pity to go ahead and get yourself your first 5-star character, which I always appreciate. Now, beyond that, we have our standard banner, we have our standard weapon banner, then we have our exclusive character and exclusive weapon banners that will come up over time. Now, when we look at the pity for the banners, we have an 80 pity on the character banners, which is really quite nice. We also have a 0.8% drop chance, which is also a very nice rate compared to some other things that we've seen. So I think they've done well in the summons, but the big thing that I wanted to bring to your attention in the summons is the fact that the weapon banner, the exclusive weapon banner, when you get a 5-star weapon, it is guaranteed to be that weapon. You don't get a different weapon to the one you're summoning for. You are always going to get that one, which I think is a fantastic system. Now, the character banner still has a 50-50, but the weapon banner, considering it's just a weapon and doesn't give you a whole new character to play with, I am so grateful that that is just guaranteed. If you're going for that weapon, you know when you get a 5-star, you will get that weapon. And I think that is a fantastic touch in the game. And before we end this video, I wanted to give you guys a little recommendation when jumping into the game. And that recommendation would be for new players, make sure you defeat every enemy in the world as you're exploring and try and capture as many echoes as you can, because catching different varieties of echoes will expand your data bank and it will increase the rarity of the echoes that you can obtain and also the frequency of the drops. So collecting all the echoes of higher rarities is really going to help you progress your account through the early game. So that is going to be it for my experience in Wuthering Waves. I have thoroughly enjoyed this beta, whether it be the casual side of farming some echoes or getting just absolutely wiped in some hologram bosses in the harder content. I think it's got a great balance of gameplay for both casual and hardcore players, and I hope you guys enjoy it when it finally does get to a global launch. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.